Why did the Southern Africa Litigation Center want Sudanese President Omar Al-Bashir arrested? And why has the Pretoria High Court denied government leave to appeal against failure to arrest President Al-Bashir? How is the verdict likely to impact South Africa's international standing? How could the arrest have affected South Africa's diplomatic relations with Sudan? What time is it? It is question time. Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Paul. The Pretoria High Court has denied government leave to appeal against its findings that the failure to arrest Sudanese President Omar Al-Bashir was unconstitutional. The matter pertains to President Bashir's presence at the African Union Summit in Johannesburg in June this year. Meanwhile, the state says it is disappointed with the outcome of that ruling. A reminder that this is a live program and therefore you can call us. Your views on the matter, 089-110-4210 or 002789-110-4210. Our Twitter handle at @QuestionTime24. My guest today is Otilia Ana Maunganidze. She's the senior researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, and she joins us from our Pretoria studios. And on the line also, we have Angela Muduguti, Southern Africa Litigation Center. We also expect to talk to ANC spokesperson Zizi Goodenough Godwa. However, before we get into the discussion, let's have a look at what Judge Hans Fabricus had to say.
The Constitutional Court has conclusively decided in National Commissioner of the South African Police Service versus South African Human Rights Litigation Center 2015 1 SA 315 Constitutional Court that the South African government is bound by the provisions of the Implementation Act and must implement its provisions. It has enacted this domestic legislation and is obviously bound by it. The result is therefore the following. The application for leave to appeal is dismissed with costs, including costs of 2 counsel.
Indeed, that was what the court decided on. Like I said, my guest Otilia Ana Maunganidze is a senior researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, and also Angela Muduguti, Southern Africa Litigation Center. Ladies, let me welcome you to Question Time today.
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Angela, perhaps let me start with you. You are probably on cloud 9.
We are indeed thrilled with the judgment. It reinforces the rule of law and the importance of South Africa adhering to its international and domestic law obligations, and also gives the victims some sense of victory, that justice is possible. Now,
why do you think it is important for South Africa to, or rather it was important for South Africa to have arrested President Bashir when he was here?
It was vital because South Africa has made commitments as a signatory to the Rome Statute of the ICC, and also having domesticated the Act, it's made a commitment at that level to fight impunity and to arrest fugitives of justice. And seeing as there are 2 credible warrants from the International Criminal Court out for President Omar Al-Bashir, South Africa was obligated to arrest him. And I think as a nation that has previously led in the forefront as far as international law and its engagement, South Africa was expected to comply with its obligations and its duties.
And you do not buy the story that he was here per African Union commitment and not necessarily visiting South Africa, as it would happen with other leaders in attending the UN summits?
Absolutely not, because the summit was being hosted by South Africa, which means South African rules apply. They go through extensive host negotiations before they host a summit, so you are given ample opportunity to express what you would prefer to happen. I mean, we saw in 2012 with Malawi, with then President Joyce Banda, they were scheduled to host the summit. President Joyce Banda made it clear that she would not have Omar Al-Bashir in Malawi, and the summit was moved to Addis Ababa. So they refused to host because the agreements didn't reflect Malawi's position on the arrest for President Omar Al-Bashir. So South Africa had the same flexibility and the same opportunity. And we've seen it before in 2009, when President Jacob Zuma had his inauguration. President Bashir was invited, but he was explicitly told that he would be arrested if he comes. Same in 2010 for the 2010 World Cup. So I really don't buy this argument that South Africa's hands were tied in this instance. I just don't think that holds water.
One of the questions that has come up very strongly is who's funding you? Who's behind this?
All the council acted on this case acted pro bono, so no one is funding this case. And I actually don't see why that question is relevant because we are fighting for the victims and for human rights. We have no political agenda.
Yeah, but pro bono would mean that they would have to be paid at some point.
No, it means they're acting for free.
For free until you have finished the matter. Whether it comes out positive or not, I guess, wouldn't that then determine whether they get paid or not?
That's not the agreement we have in place, no.
So they're working for free?
When we began this case, that was the basis upon which we continued, yes.
Okay. Ottilia, let me bring you on here. What do you think the implication of this today's court pronouncement is on whether relations between South Africa and the Republic of Sudan?
Well, all this decision does is really confirm the position of the High Court in June in terms of firstly issuing an arrest warrant, but then also restating the status of international law, at least insofar as the ICC statute is concerned. In terms of it affecting diplomatic relations between the South African executive and Sudan, I don't see how that would happen. Because even though there was an arrest warrant that was issued on the 15th of June, and in light of the High Court decision, Al-Bashir and President Jacob Zuma still did meet a couple of weeks ago. So clearly the relationship there hasn't been soured, and I don't think the High Court decision will do anything in that regard.
But it would appear here in South Africa it's more a political matter more than just a legal case, actually?
Yes, it has been made into a political issue. The application at the High Court was not a political application. It was a legal application for an arrest warrant. But as you correctly pointed out earlier, there have been statements that have come out of the ANC as well as from other parties making it into a political issue. And perhaps that's where the challenge lies, that it has become an issue of diplomacy rather than an issue of law.
And Angela, maybe what one would like to understand is why Al-Bashir and not any other person who may be in South Africa, perhaps leaving behind dead bodies, wherever he or she comes from?
Well, that question is very easy to answer because there are arrest warrants for President Omar Al-Bashir. And the same would apply for anyone else the ICC issues an arrest warrant for who is found in South Africa. President Omar Al-Bashir just happens to be a prominent example because he is a head of state, but the same would apply for anybody else who's been indicted by the court.
But you didn't do the same when Ravalomanana was here.
That case was already being handled.
Yeah, well, it was handled recently, but he was here in South Africa and there was a warrant back in Madagascar. You didn't do anything. Why Al-Bashir?
President Omar Al-Bashir has been a fugitive since 2009. He has not been to South Africa since. His presence here provided a vital opportunity.
Well, you had Ravalomanana who was in South Africa.
As I said, that case is ongoing. The NPA is aware of it and is investigating that dossier. So that case is ongoing.
Angela, let's get something straight here. Ravalomanana was in South Africa for a very long time. He had a warrant which was outstanding in Madagascar. Why did you not get or pressurize South African government to arrest him and deport him?
As I've already stated, that case is before the National Prosecuting Authority. They are looking into it. You should perhaps be directing your question at them.
No, I'm talking to you now, that is realizing that you are such a noble organization that is interested in law and order. Why the selective justice?
It's not selective justice. The NPA was not in a position to arrest President Omar Al-Bashir, which is why we had to take them to court to enforce that obligation. They are already looking into Ravalomanana. So they are doing their job in that respect. However, when it came to President Omar Al-Bashir, they were not doing their job, which is why we had to take them to task.
Okay. Ottilia, the implications, I know that we have spoken about this before as a people here in South Africa. Had it happened, wouldn't it indeed have been a declaration of war?
I don't think arresting Al-Bashir would have amounted to a declaration of war. Granted, of course, how that would have been perceived by the Sudanese authorities would be a different question altogether. But fundamentally, I think the real issue was if South Africa did not want to put itself in the position that it did, that the summit could have been hosted in Addis and not in Johannesburg. So in many ways, the position that the South African government finds itself now is rather unfortunately self-inflicted. So had he been arrested, we can only speculate. To date, in the countries that he has gone to, he hasn't been arrested. The one country that after he left the country indicated that they would have arrested him had he not left, almost immediately upon arrival, which was Nigeria in 2013. The implications for Nigeria there wasn't any conversation that happened in terms of Nigeria stating that they would have arrested Al-Bashir. And in fact, Nigeria continues to play an important role on the African continent.
Okay, I want us to take a break. When we return, let's look at what options lie ahead for the government of South Africa and as far as this matter is concerned, because they can easily escalate the matter, if not to the Supreme Court of Appeal, perhaps to the Constitutional Court, and indeed it is a constitutional matter. But let us hear your views as viewers. 089-110-4210. We'll be taking your calls right after this.
Your World makes it its business every evening to round up the leading local stories and international news to keep you informed all the time.
Make a date with Your World every evening for all the news headlines around the world to keep you abreast with knowledge.
Catch Your World for headlines across the world every Monday to Friday from 9 p.m, then Saturday and Sunday from 7 p.m.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. Before we continue with our program, let's have a look at what Mthunzi Maga had to say.
We will have to reflect as government on all the issues that have been raised in the judgment in a bid to determine whether the appeal itself, the judgment is appealable. And the only way to do that is to approach the Supreme Court of Appeal, but that will have to be preceded by a substantive affidavit where we are laying down all the grounds upon which we believe the court erred if we are to take that decision.
That's Mthunzi Maga speaking on behalf of the department there. Now, my guest, Otilia Anamaunganidze, Senior Researcher, Institute for Security Studies, and she's joining us from our Pretoria studios. On the line, we've got Angela Mutuguti, Southern Africa Litigation Center. Those are the people who actually wanted President Omar Al-Bashir arrested. Now, Angela, what does it mean now that, yes, government has lost this part, but President Al-Bashir is obviously not in South Africa? What are you going to do? Are you going to force them to go for him in Khartoum? Angela, are you still with us? Okay, we seem to have lost Angela there, but anyway, that's fine. Otilia, who is supporting the move to arrest President Al-Bashir here in Africa?
Could you clarify the question? Are you speaking in terms of other heads of state or
yes,
generally?
Countries.
No country has sort of come forward to say we support the arrest of Al-Bashir or that we don't support the arrest of Al-Bashir. Some statements that have been made quite specifically by countries like Botswana have been around the need to support the work of the International Criminal Court and to ensure that it effectively does its work. What we have seen, however, in terms of those against the arrest of Al-Bashir is President Mugabe of Zimbabwe indicating that no sitting head of state, or anyone rather, should be indicted by the ICC or arrested. More generally, the African Union, since 2009, when the first arrest warrant for Al-Bashir was issued, has repeatedly said that African countries should not cooperate with the ICC in respect of arrest warrants of sitting heads of state, but can continue to cooperate in respect of arrest warrants for other people.
But now, perhaps one can ask a very rhetorical question to say, yes, we know the ICC doesn't have security personnel as such, but why can't they get him arrested any other way? I mean, he's going to be attending the United Nations General Assembly. Why can't they get him arrested there and not try and put pressure on countries like South Africa?
Well, we are yet to see whether he'll attend the UN General Assembly. Last year, he sought to attend the General Assembly and didn't get his visa to go to the United States. So supposing he does go to the UN General Assembly, perhaps he'll be arrested there. We're yet to see. But as you rightly point out, the ICC does rely on states to effect the arrest warrants because it doesn't have a policing function. It is a court similar to a high court here in Pretoria, where judges do not arrest individuals, but they seek the police to effect that arrest.
Okay, Angela, I'm told you are back with us on the line and you have to go. But a quick one. I'm saying, yes, you may have won today's day in court, but fact of the matter is President Al-Bashir is not in South Africa. What are you going to do? Are you going to put pressure on South Africa to go and arrest him up there?
No, because South Africa cannot legally do that. South Africa can act when President Omar Al-Bashir is here. And what has been achieved here is the correct precedent to prevent President Omar Al-Bashir's presence here without arrest.
But fact of the matter is, he was allowed to leave. Do you think if it happens, because there's a possibility that he may be coming back in December, if it happens this time around, you have put enough pressure for President Jacob Zuma to unleash the police on him?
I think the court order is clear. I think the precedent that has been set has been clear, and I think the government of South Africa will be wary before they disregard a court order a second time.
Well, they disregarded it the first time. What makes you think that they will honor it this time around?
Well, let's wait and see what happens, shall we?
Well, thank you very much for your time and good luck.
Thank you for having me.
Anyway, you are in KZN.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I want to greet you, sir, and the viewers at home.
Thank you.
I hear about the arrest of the President of Sudan. But my concern around this particular matter is that South Africa never invited him. That is one. He came with the ticket of AU. How can now that we being held responsible to arrest the President of Sudan? And secondly, we have as South Africans or Africans prioritize the agenda of Africa, because if we are saying that now South Africa must arrest the President of Sudan, what was going to happen, the relationship as Africans? And those that are saying that South Africa was supposed to arrest, why do we put the agenda, why don't we put behind the agenda of Africa? We can't, as Africans, arrest the president of one of our continents, you know. I think if they want to arrest him, they know his country, they must go there and arrest him. Because now the plane is coming to South Africa to say they must arrest. Why did they not put a pressure in Nigeria the time the president was in Nigeria in 2013? Why only South Africa now? must be pressurized to say that must arrest. Already now he has left. He has gone back to his country.
Okay.
Do they mean to say that South Africa must go there in Sudan and arrest him? Why don't they go there and arrest him? Because he's not hiding.
Okay.
His country of residence is known. They should have gone there if they want to arrest him. I don't think really it's fair for us as South Africa to say that we should have been arrested the president of Sudan.
Okay.
Because in Nigeria he went there. He was not arrested. But now we are being taken to court.
Okay, thank you very much, Qeliwe, in KZN. And Ottilia, perhaps let's look, is there any precedence to something like this where a sitting president, that is, would have had to be arrested in another country?
Yes, it's interesting, in fact, that Qeliwe spoke about Nigeria because Nigeria was put before its courts in seeking to issue an arrest warrant in respect of Al-Bashir. But also, and to respond to your question, it was Nigerian authorities that arrested the then President of Liberia, Charles Taylor, and transferred him to the Special Court for Sierra Leone for prosecution. Charles Taylor was eventually prosecuted and convicted for his complicity in the war in Sierra Leone. Now,
Eunice is on the line. Eunice, welcome.
Thank you very much for Timpo, and how are you?
Yeah. Yes.
AlBashir. United Nations. The AlBashir. And the Motavanyan Kanta when Mutumpo, Kiraka Pretoria different color. I shall Mura or Tabawa, Boswaka Motorica 400, annual, or Matalia guy. So, AlBashir living in Makatira, and if next year, but all these two issues are then Arna Parliament, the Mulimar
Okay, that's Eunice there basically saying whether you arrest Omar Al-Bashir or not, it's not going to put bread on the table of South Africans because a lot of things are happening, and if this is a foretaste of things to come next year, then it means there's not going to be any parliament. But perhaps let's look at the essence of political dynamism here, Ottilia, that does the fact that South Africa is consuming so much of its resources and time to President Al-Bashir make it a better society on the continent? Does it become a model to say, look, they are entertaining things of international importance as well?
Perhaps one could argue that, but at the same time, you can also argue that by investing so much time in trying to go against the decision of the High Court, that they are in many ways acting against the spirit and intention of the Rome Statute, which South Africa has domesticated. How much the South African government will put towards contesting this and how far they will go with it, we're yet to see. The indications, however, are that they do remain committed to pushing this matter as far as they possibly can. You might recall after a cabinet meeting, the minister in the presidency, Jeff Radebe, came back to say that this will not be a short process, that South Africa will seek clarification. If not at domestic level, they might approach the International Court of Justice for clarification on a number of provisions in the Rome Statute of the ICC.
And perhaps finally, do you think South Africa will, in case the president returns in December, as it is speculated, ever arrest President Al-Bashir?
That's a difficult question to ask me because I cannot speak to whether they will actually do it. What I can say is that at least in terms of the High Court decision that they should. The Pretoria High Court has said so, but whether they will, look, it will have to be an issue of the arrest warrant being transmitted to the police and the police carrying out the arrest warrant. That's something we're yet to see.
Ottilia Monganidze. Thank you very much for your time. That was Question Time for today. Big thank you to my guest and to you for watching the show. From me and the crew, have yourself a wonderful time. Goodbye.